Welcome to Healthcare IT Today. I'm John Lynn, together with my colleague and friend Colin Hung. The world of technology and healthcare are ever changing in new and novel ways, and that's why we love this stuff. So join us as we discuss the latest healthcare and health IT news, meshed together in new ways which help generate ideas and new perspectives. Plus, we'll have a little fun along the way. Today, we're going to be talking about our healthcare AI pet peeves. And be sure to follow the show on social media at the hashtag HITSM and on LinkedIn, John Lynn, LYNN, and Colin Hung, HUNG. And please check out our 20 years of health IT content at healthcareittoday.com. So, Colin, are you pro AI? We have too much AI? Where are you at in that?
Well, it depends. Is AI listening to this? Because of course I'm pro AI. No,
Well,
but
it is transcribing it, so it is listening, I guess.
no, I'm definitely pro AI. I think most people are, but I think it is sort of questionable whether the claims people are making about the effectiveness of AI are 100% true. But I definitely think it's something that's very helpful for sure.
Yeah, I just think it's a bad question because I don't think we have a choice. It's coming whether we want it
Yeah,
or not. The only question is how we implement it.
that,
So maybe
that
that's
is.
why it's good we talk about the pet peeves.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, we got a lot. I mean, we got a lot of areas to cover, but yes, I thought it would be interesting to talk about pet peeves. And I guess right off the bat, John, like what's your pet peeve related to the use of AI in healthcare, if you have any at all?
Well, you'll like my first pet peeve in related to AI in healthcare, and that is that marketing has ruined the term. Because, like every health IT company is now an AI company that solves burnout or whatever, right? Like, and they're all using AI when you're like, that's not really AI. That's like analytics or, that's machine learning or, whatever. So, I think that's probably my first pet peeve is like abusing the term AI when you're like, dude, all you did was like a simple automation play. There's no AI, there's no art intelligence involved. It's just like some basic automation, which is good, right? Like I don't think it's a bad thing, but we certainly are overplaying the term AI compared to what the solution actually does, which it solves an important problem, and we should be okay to say that, right? But I get it. Everyone wants to implement AI. They want an AI strategy. They don't need an automation strategy, or at least they're not asking for it right now. So, abusing the term kind of makes sense, but it is funny how some of the things are like, it's not really AI.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue that one. It's so true, right? Like we're definitely at the the height of, or even maybe not even at the height of the hype cycle in different areas of AI use in healthcare. And so the claims people are making, that AI washing, if you will, that's definitely a pet peeve, and I think a lot of people have that because it's harder. It makes it harder for people who are doing real innovation in this space to differentiate themselves from the ones who are just kind of, yeah, like you said, deploying some sophisticated automation, right, versus a
Yeah.
real AI.
I mean, it's fascinating to think we're not at the peak of the hype cycle, which you might be right. I'd be interested to hear what people think on social media. Do you think we're at the top of the peak of the hype cycle, or is there still more to go? But you're right. But I mean, what's interesting is that there is innovation happening even when it's not AI, and so we should be happy with that and accepting of the fact that it's going to improve, especially in healthcare. There's so many opportunities to do automation or other innovations that you don't necessarily have to go full AI. I mean, I'd say that's probably my other pet peeve related to this, which is like machine learning is really valuable too. It can produce great results. You don't have to have a full artificial intelligence solution, including the Gen AI stuff, which has captured all the imagination. To me, the reality is that it's almost never just AI. It's not like, oh, AI solves XYZ problem in healthcare. It's almost never that. It's the AI plus communications, plus interacting with the patient, plus some trigger with data, probably from machine learning or something like that. And so to me, the real key is how do you package all of those elements, the data, the communication, the security, the and some AI to make it even more powerful. But it's packaging all of those things as opposed to, oh, it's AI, it's solving everything in the world.
Yeah, I think for me, that's my pet peeve related to general use of AI in healthcare. I think it gets too much credit. I think AI gets way too much credit for some of the benefits it's supposedly has created, because very rarely do you implement AI on its own on top of something and change nothing else. Usually AI is coupled with a process change, some other new technology, and some other things that have been improved, right? Or even your own knowledge of the people have improved. And so it's really hard to say that, oh, it's only because of AI that we got all these great benefits. Maybe AI contributed 50% of it, but the other 50% was just the fact that you implemented a new policy, a new procedure that was more efficient than the last one that now AI made possible. But it's not that AI did it, it's just that the technology changed that made it possible, much like the computer did way back when. So my pet peeve is that I think we're giving AI way too much credit for some of the improvements we're making in healthcare. And I would love to see it kind of get fixed. And I think that's leading to some of the backlash around it, right? Where now people are realizing, well, maybe it's not as helpful as we thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, we've heard this before. It applied to technology in general, but now even more so in the AI world, where you're like, well, if your process sucks, then we just made your process faster. Your sucky process is now going to go work even faster and be just as bad, right? And so, to your point, you got to fix the process. Otherwise, AI is just going to make things worse quicker. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. I think that is a big part of the implementation side of it.
Well, what about the technology itself, John? Do you have any pet peeves related to the AI tech?
Yeah, and I'm probably hitting the vendors a bit more on this one, and I'm speaking as the CIOs, CTOs that are evaluating all this AI. And I think what's the problem we have, and this is kind of a fundamental human issue, so maybe it's inescapable, I don't know, but I would say there's a principle that happens that we overstate what the AI can do in the short term, and I think we understate what it's going to do in the long term. And
Mm.
so, you get it, right? You're a salesperson, you're like, I'm going to sell this AI product into a healthcare organization. Then you're going to tell them, hey, it's getting these immediate returns, it's doing all this, right? Like, and this is why you should buy and buy now, right? And the reality is, and this is what I'm hearing from a lot of the CIOs I talk to, is that in the short term, there's actually expense. You got to pay for the AI. Sometimes they do a value-based arrangement, right, where it's shared savings or things like that. But in most cases, there's an investment, whether it's money for the software or whether it's time and process flow change, like we just talked about. Like, there's an investment that's costing the organization money, and usually the benefits don't come until the long term. Now, the nice part is exactly the best part of this whole concept, and this pet peeve, if you will, is that in the long term, it's actually even better. It can be better than what you expect because you did improve your process and you did layer the AI to make it faster. And then you saw the results that you wanted, and maybe even better than what you thought. And then it also puts you in a position to leverage better data, more revenue, whatever it is, right? All of these things that allow you to see even more results. So yeah, I hate when people talk about like these short-term quick win benefits, when the reality is in the short term, it's probably overstated, in the long term, it's understated.
Yeah, I mean I think that you're right. It's very true that we can never see past the horizon of our current reality, right?
Mhm.
Much like, hey, we would never have envisioned a horseless cart, right? Like, like that just wasn't a concept because that we existed in that world before, and then along came a car and everything changed, and we never could imagine the interstate system, transportation, and food, the implications on food and supply chains and stuff like that. At the time when the first cars were invented, we would never have thought about those things. And so I think the same thing is with AI, like every other technology we've ever had. For me though, the my pet peeve about AI technology today is it doesn't show its work, which is a
Mm,
really weird thing to say, but like
explainability.
it you don't know how or why it reasoned what it did. Like there's no way for me to see unless I ask it. Like, okay, how did you arrive at this conclusion based on the 9 inputs that I gave you or the 5 data sets I gave you? It just sort of spits out an answer in most cases, right? You have to build your prompt in a way to actually get it to tell you what it did. But I think but a lot of people don't even look at that, because I think if we looked at that, that would give you clues as to A, whether it was hallucinating or not, or B, at least to go, well, at least you'll learn something as you go along, and then therefore you can continue to improve the way you use the software or the technology. But because it doesn't show you what it's doing or how it arrived, even in a more colloquial, simplistic way. Like I know it's doing all this complex math, right? But just to tell you, oh well, I really put a focus on this source because A, it's trusted, B, it's this person who has this reputation, and I didn't put as much emphasis on this one. Like it doesn't tell you that; it just does it. And so that's my pet peeve. Is I think the companies and the technology should really do that, so that way we can all learn what it's doing is this instead of being this black box.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's a feature of the Gen AI technology that explainability is really hard, and you can actually have it explained, but you have to add that to the prompt, which is another mindset shift that we probably all need to have. I did see someone say recently, and sorry, I forgot who it was, but I was reading on social media, and they're like, "Imagine that a probabilistic AI model (LLM) is going to be wrong occasionally." That's just the nature of the math.
Right.
Like, it's like, oh yeah, we knew this was coming, right? And to your point, if we had the explanation, we could understand why it was wrong and then be able to make fixes and or at least evaluate it as humans. So yeah, that's really interesting. But I think it's moving quickly though, and I think it's going to be interesting to see where all of that goes because it's not like we're ignorant to the fact that it hallucinates, right? Like no one is ignorant to what's going on. They actually know it's the nature of the technology. And I'm interested to see what comes next and what this technology enables to allow us to create something that is more determinate and more explainable. And so that we can have the consistency that healthcare kind of requires.
Right. Right. No, and I think back to what you said before, it's part of the furniture. It's quickly become part of the standard now. You can't, you wouldn't implement a solution that didn't have some sort of AI connection. Why would you? In a sense. Plus, everyone already stuffs it in there, so you can't really buy anything without AI in it these days. But yeah, I mean, I think it's not going into. It's not a fad, right? And I think that's been true for a while. I think most people can acknowledge that. But I think in healthcare, it is not a fad. It is here. It's just a question, as you put it before, how are we deploying it, and where is it already baked in, where you don't even know? And I think
Well,
that's my
that's the
other.
scary pet
That's
peeve that I have as
yeah,
well, which is like, okay, you just said it's embedded. How are we going to pay for all that, right?
yeah,
Like right now, we are getting AI at a discount. We are
yes,
getting a discounted rate of AI because people are going after market share. Well, when that discount runs out, what does the true cost of AI look like? And do we want to use it? Mohammed Siddiqui, he had this amazing article talking about some of the costs, and he said, "Hey, the cost per use has gone down, but our overall cost has gone up."
right.
Because we're using it so much more. And it's like, can the cost per unit go down enough that it actually lowers the cost? That these are really hard questions. And the fact that a lot of people aren't even talking about it and talking about the fact that, hey, right now we're in a cool time that we're using it at a discount because all these people are investing in it. Well, it's going to come to roost sooner or later.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Like we're in the land grab mode, and then when you're land grab right now, the way that the funding model or the funding VC areas work, they favor and are rewarding share, not profitability. But as soon as there are dominant players, and we're getting that point, all of a sudden now it turns into you need to make money, and they can make a lot, right? But that's the token costs, the per token costs could start to skyrocket, whereas today they're essentially free. Like we're getting away with a lot of it. Yeah, very interesting to think about and especially also with the backlash around the data centers that run these things,
Oh,
right? Man, those
for sure.
those cities aren't going to be that cheap with their land and their water that long, right? They're going to start increasing their costs and the fees that they extract from these companies. So, yeah, interesting times.
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Healthcare IT Today with John Lynn and Colin Hung. If we're talking about our pet peeves related to AI in healthcare. And so far, we've got quite a few of them.
Is this like a Festivus, a July Festivus rather than December? Is that
I
where?
think that. I also think it's just sort of catharsis, right? To get this off our chest that we've been bottling up for a while as we walk the show floors. Well, John, let's get to my favorite area of pet peeves that we're going to talk about, and that is AI startups. What's your pet peeve related to them?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of them. That's what's amazing, and that's great. I think it's great that we have so many people working on innovation and applying AI in a variety of ways. Like I tell people, AI is going to be applied to everything. Whether it should or shouldn't is a different question, right? And part of that is my biggest pet peeve is so many AI startup companies come to me, and maybe I have two pet peeves here. I mean, I'll start with one. The first one is that like, are you really a company? Or are you just a feature, right? Like, and AI makes it so simple to solve a very simple problem or even a complex problem, right? But you can roll out a company and solve that problem. The question I always ask when I look at it is like, okay, is that really a company that can build, forward and be adopted widely, or is this just a feature that's going to be knocked off by an EHR vendor or by whoever else that comes along and says, wait, that's just like a simple feature that I can roll out, or the hospital themselves just solves it and be like, oh yeah, this is a good idea. But if you were able to roll it out quickly using some foundational model like ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever, Claude, if you did one of those, like, well, why can't the hospitals just do that themselves? And so, unfortunately, I see that with a lot of companies, and it obviously it's part of the nature. In some ways, that's why it's good that entrepreneurs are ignorant to what's required, is because sometimes they do realize, oh, I got to develop these other 10 things to make it defensible and make it more useful, and so that someone can't do it. But far too often, I get something where it's like, that's cool. That actually solves a real problem, but it's not really a company. It's just a great feature.
I'm totally with you on that. We've run into, I think we've both seen, entrepreneurs like that at a lot of pitch competitions and a lot of people who walk around the various shows that we go to. And it's great that they're being creative, they're thinking about that these problems exist and trying to create a quote unquote a company around it. But you definitely, I think, you have to ask the question of whether or not this is a viable long term business strategy versus, oh, this is a really nice feature that you could maybe hopefully just sell really quickly to somebody as opposed to try and build a whole business around it. Um, my pet peeve around AIs and startups is completely different, and that is with the ability to now code very very easily and create apps very very quickly. The Just because something works doesn't mean it can actually be deployed,
Yeah,
because
or
one
scaled.
or scaled, right? Because one of the things that I think is lost on people who didn't grow up in the tech field or grew up in coding or around coders is the all the complexity around scaling and quality and safety and all like of your solution, right? The stress testing it for cybersecurity risks, making sure that you're not being inefficient with your read writes to various places, or you're not memory leaks, and like all these things that as a developer you're taught, right, as to watch out for. When you vibe code, AI is supposed to look at those things, but it doesn't really unless you ask it to, right? Like unless you build these in. And so you could end up with horribly bloated code that works in a one-off situation. But then when you scale this to 1,000 users, 10,000 users, or try to put it inside the context of an organization, it just will fail. And I am concerned that some startups and some companies that I run into, that's how they coded their product. Because there's not an engineer to be seen. It's just a bunch of business people. All the power to you, right? Or a bunch of clinicians don't know anything about it. Vibe coded something, great, and that one-off demo works wonderfully. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I would deploy this in a clinical environment.
It's a really good example. It reminds me of this person who did that. They vibe coded a solution that they thought was really interesting, and it is. It solves an interesting problem. And they were like sweating the use of tokens on the back end because it wasn't optimized for token use. And so now they're like, geez, I'm going to run out and then my thing's going to be broken. And there's just so many things about scaling that a lot of people don't understand. So that's a good one. And yeah, the other one kind of related to that, but but from a different perspective. Although scaling it is people it's a tough thing as a startup because you don't want to scale up to create this bulletproof system when you're like, I'm not even sure if someone's going to pay for it yet, right? So there's this interesting balance that you have to run. But the thing that is a pet peeve for me with so many startups is they think too far ahead. They and it's great to have a big vision and you need that to raise money, and that makes sense. But they go and they're like, if every patient would adopt my record system, then imagine what we could do for clinical trials and for evaluation of outcomes and that. And you're like, okay, you're right. If you had all the data of every patient, you could do really cool stuff. How many do you have now? Oh, 100. And you're like, okay, well, when do you actually become what you want to become, right? Like, sure, if I have 10,000 people that all listen to me and say, what should I buy for healthcare IT? There's a lot I can do with that, right? But if I have three, there's not a lot. And so the gap between where they want to go and where they are is often very different. And too often they describe the value that they can create once they have whatever platform, whatever data that they need to solve it, when in fact today they can't solve that. And so that disconnect is really disconcerting because it's like, okay, well, if you want to get there, how are you going to get there? What's the pathway to get to all of that data or that platform that would, in fact, be very cool and you'd be able to do really valuable things?
I love it. I'll just throw this quickly. I won't explain it, but my other pet peeve with startups recently is that I am flabbergasted that people are just relying on AI to do their research for competitors and into the space. Because I've run into two entrepreneurs recently who thought they didn't have any competitors and thought that this technology that they created didn't exist in healthcare. And I could name 12 companies off the top of my head. And they're like, well, and then they were like, are you sure they exist? I'm like, these guys have like 80% market share. Of course I know they exist. And I've been to their booths, right? And they're like, well, but when I typed it in ChatGPT, it didn't say I had any competitors. I'm like, well, I don't know what question or prompt you use, but I can tell you for sure that these are there. So yeah, don't rely just on those GPTs for for your competitive research into a
That's
market.
amazing. Wow.
So, John, last one. Any pet peeves related to healthcare AI policy?
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is a political angle and perspective of mine. I'm generally lean like less regulation is better. I don't think there's any way regulation can keep up with AI. It's just too fast. And so I think the majority of AI regulation is going to be problematic. So my pet peeve is AI regulation in general, probably, and trying to assume that you could somehow legislate security or privacy or any of those things. Like I actually think that's just a fool's errand, and it's a pet peeve when someone wants to invest all that, because what it actually does is hinders innovation and doesn't actually solve the problem, because innovative people are going to go to another state, another country, another whatever, or they'll just ignore it. And how are you going to enforce it, right? Like there's almost no enforcement mechanism. So that's the pet peeve. The exception for me, which I think we've talked about a little bit before, but I think the only thing you should regulate, and there's probably a couple things, but the biggest one is any sort of egregious action, right? Like if you're using AI to scam patients out of payments and things like that, well, that's something you should, and you should have really harsh penalties for people that are doing really evil things with the data and with the use of AI. And so, like that type of regulation, I support. And it should be really damaging, not just slightly damaging, right? Like, if it's clear that you are scamming patients, like you should be punished in a very harsh way, because clearly you shouldn't be using AI for that, right? So, that is the one regulation where I'm pro regulation, is the damages for people doing really awful things. Because that, and they should be held accountable. But the rest to me is just almost impossible to do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think in healthcare we do have a plague of overregulation in some cases. In other places we don't have any. And right now in AI, some would argue we don't have any. So we do need some. But like you, I think we have to be careful in what we decide to regulate, because I think trying to regulate the technology is, it hurts more than it helps. And we've seen that in the past, right? Um, but I think there needs to be regulation around some aspects of the technology. And then I go back to something I said before. I think it should be regulated that if you're using AI for healthcare, you should disclose it. So it doesn't matter what you use, and I don't care what you use, or, you know, whether it has to meet any standards. I'm not for that. But if you're using any form of AI, you need to disclose it. Like, hey, this thing is built on AI, right? If you are, and then if you're deploying AI built by someone else, most likely because you probably didn't build it yourself, you should be forced to retain documentation of how you trained it or how you're feeding it. Because should it come back one day that something was wrong, and it was consistently wrong, I'm not talking about a hallucination, but I'm talking about something you fundamentally did or didn't do to train your AI, and it caused some problems, we need to go back and figure that out for the benefit of everybody. So much like how you have to have a drawing for a building, because one day that building needs to be changed or something happens to it, we need to go back to those drawings and figure out, oh, should the standard have changed? I feel that the same way should happen with AI, because right now we have no idea how company A versus company B trained their AI to detect this or that. And they're not required to keep any record of how they did it or didn't do it. And so although that, you know, although it doesn't have nothing, has no regard on liability, it should, for the benefit of our industry, we should go back and figure that out, right? To be able to go back and do that kind of analysis.
Yeah, that's a pretty good two-step thing on healthcare policy: egregious actions and transparency. Like that would be a good, you know, those are things that are achievable and helpful. And then the market will figure it out, because if you're transparent about it, the market won't use you, or will, you know, hold you accountable to change or whatever it might be, right? But when it's hidden, it's hard to do that. So
Right.
that's a really good one.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, I hope our audience will write their pet peeves into the comments, or maybe send us an email with your comments around what the pet peeves are. But we are now at the end of another episode, John, if you can believe it. So,
Amazing.
so thanks to all of you who tuned into this episode of Healthcare IT Today. You can find more details about our show by checking out the programs page on healthcarenowradio.com. And please share your voice and engage with us at healthcareittoday.com and on social media using the hashtag HITSM. I'm Colin Hung, along with my friend and health IT collaborator, John Lin. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.